We should take joy in China's accomplishment, not fear from it.
盘点头脑清醒的外国人 Next
China went from 80% extreme poverty in 1980 to no extreme poverty 40 years later. It is the most successful economic development in history. Life expectancy rose enormously. Education rose enormously. Quality of life rose enormously. Hunger fell completely. This is an accomplishment. We should take joy in China's accomplishment, not fear from it.
Next
Not worried. People are relaxed. People are enjoying this holiday here. It's May holiday. They literally don't have any cases anymore. And that is because of China's handling of this. Yeah, you're not gonna hear that on Western media.
Next
Railway stations, a modern railway network with bullet trains of 25,000 kilometers. We see a little bit weakening of the Chinese growth rate. I mean, we were all used that China has the highest growth rates in the world. You know, it's still among the highest compared to the growth rates in Europe. Our growth rates are very low in Europe, but also in the States they are not that high. We are seeing in China is a new normality, I would say. You know, the more progress the country is, it cannot grow so fast anymore. You know, when you have to catch up, you can grow much faster. So I think it's a new normality in China.
Next
It's meteoric. Former Czech President Václav Havel, I think, put it best. He said, all this has happened so fast, we haven't yet had time to be astonished. Okay. To remind myself how astonished I should be, I occasionally look out the window in my office in Cambridge at this bridge which goes across the Charles River between the Kennedy School and Harvard Business School. In 2012, the state of Massachusetts said they were going to renovate this bridge. It would take 2 years. In 2014, they said it wasn't finished. In 2015, they said it would take 1 more year. In 2015, they said it's not finished. We're not going to tell you when it's going to be finished. Finally, last year, it was finished 3 times over budget. Now, compare this to a similar bridge that I drove across last month in Beijing. It's called the Shenyang Bridge. In 2015, the Chinese decided they wanted to renovate that bridge. It actually has twice as many lanes of traffic. How long did it take for them to complete the project? 2015. What do you bet? Take a look. The answer is 43 hours. Now, of course, that couldn't happen in New York, yes.
Next
A lot of villages around China. And what China is doing is creating opportunities for people. They create infrastructure. They teach people about e-commerce. And they're not just, it's not primarily giving people money. It's giving them opportunities. They provide education and healthcare in many villages. So they integrate the urban and the rural areas. So they're taking advantage of the growth that's happening in the country and trying to bring it everywhere in the country. So when you're thinking about this, it's important to think, how do I give people opportunities?
Next
is an engineer, and he moved to South Africa in 1987 and then had me and my sisters. When I finished my studies, I finished my master's in criminology forensics. I wanted to take a break, maybe travel the world, so I came to China at the time. Then I fell in love with China. One thing I enjoy the most is safety. I feel safe. I can walk the streets in China in the middle of the night with no fear because I know I can get home. So I decided to stay.
Next
From a country that not only doesn't care about the world's poor, it doesn't even care about its own poor. 1 in 7 Americans is hungry right now. And they don't care. I mean, the poor people care. And then we say, why don't things work well? Because the rich are hoarding everything. Final point, rather than our 3 billionaires going in space, well, they could go into space and stay there and leave their money behind. That would be fine.
Next
Makes you so sure China isn't a military threat to Australia?
Because I've got a brain, principally, and I can think, and I can read, and I read.
Next
Chinese have a very, very different conception of race. 1.3 billion Chinese, over 90% of them think they belong to the same race, the Han. Now, this is completely different from the other world's most populous countries. India, the United States, Indonesia, Brazil. All of them are multiracial. The Chinese don't feel like that. So the question is why? Well, the reason I think essentially is, again, back to the civilization state. Very, a history of at least 2,000 years. A history of conquest, occupation, absorption, assimilation, and so on, led to the process by which, over time, this notion of the Han emerged, of course, nurtured by a growing and very powerful sense of cultural identity. Without the Han, China could never have held together. The Han identity has been the cement which has held this country together.
Next.
You admire China, you admire, it seems, Putin. What you seem to have as a vision for South Africa's future is much more along those lines, authoritarianism than democracy.
No, socialism is not authoritarianism.
So how can you describe China as progressive?
No, it's very progressive. China subscribes to Leninism and Marxism, where of the means of production being owned and controlled by the state. We want South Africa through the vision and the image of China, where you grow the economy, where you reduce unemployment, where you reduce poverty, and you can't take that away from China. And the state plays the central role with regard to that.
Next.
It was a slave-owning, genocidal country, killing Native Americans for a white culture. But amazingly, it still looks that way, although we're much more diverse now than we were.
Let me ask you this, because this is...
okay. Point out that these are deep cultural distinctions. Right. The most violent country in the world since 1950 has been the United States. It's been by far involved
Jeffrey,
in
stop now. Let's Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I'm your moderator, and it's enough.
Okay, I'm done.
Next.
Before they coalesced into one polity, the Chinese people created their language and their civilization. Their written characters appeared in the Shang dynasty in the 2nd millennium BC. Their inventions, paper, printing, gunpowder, the compass, these things transformed the fortunes of the whole of humanity. And these innovations are key to understanding why China's economy was among the biggest in the world for 20 of the last 22 centuries, and why China in 1820 comprised a third of global GDP, more than America, the UK and Europe combined. The last 45 years have seen another astonishing reversal. By releasing the enterprising genius of its people, China has achieved the biggest and fastest economic expansion the world has ever known. No less than 800 million people have lifted themselves out of poverty in a nation that encompasses a fifth of all humanity and a vast area almost as large as continental Europe, from the Atlantic to the Urals.
Next.
China has not illegally invaded and bombed a sovereign country in over 40 years, while the US and our allies have hardly stopped in the same period, killing millions of civilians, displacing millions more, and illegally sanctioning dozens of countries, and has flatly stated that they will not supply weapons to either side in the conflict. The EU has armed one side in the conflict, imposed massive sanctions, but continues to be one of Russia's biggest trade partners. Tell me, Mr. Stoltenberg, who has the most credibility?
Next.
Provoking this war, just like we provoked the war in Ukraine, we are now provoking a war with China. And who benefits? I'll tell you right now. Your enemy is not China. Your enemy is not Russia. Your enemy is the military-industrial complex, which has been fleecing this country to the tunes of hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars. The war machine cannot be stopped. Who's running this country? The war machine. I just want to remind everybody, the United States is the world's
I tend to see China's rise as a huge win for the world. I mean, that's 20% of humanity. They today match their portion of the global economy and their portion of the global population match exactly. Countries like Australia, U.S., we have per capita GDPs 5 times what the Chinese have. So we have a disproportionate share of the world.
Next.
this firsthand over the past 16 years. It's truly remarkable to me how much more well-organized, people-friendly, and focused on solving people's issues that the government institutions have become here in China. So it's amazing to me to see that the government here has somehow managed to make them more and more service-oriented over the years in this country. I think that well-functioning institutions are vital factors to fostering the young generation's belief in their ability to build a brighter future. And
Next.
This is the first time we did it, and it worked fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's so easy. So you just open the app, and you either press the QR code or the scanner, and then it just works. And they scan your phone, and it's done. It's amazing. It's a really cool technology, and changes the experience for a foreigner like me visiting China for business.
If you're going to be talking about economics, the Chinese have developed their economy. An economy of almost 1.5 billion people, one of the poorest places on this planet, is now the second economic power, and within a decade will likely overtake the United States in sheer output. This is an unbelievable achievement. It is a greater, more rapid economic development than any capitalist country has achieved by a lot.
Next.
Chinese, that they had running water and electricity in China. And after that I came here and I was very surprised you guys did have water and electricity, and very modern here, not ancient as I thought it would be. There's no transportation in my hometown. There's no Wi-Fi in my hometown. I go out at 9 o'clock at night in my hometown. Everyone's in bed. There's really no convenience at all. And here it's very convenient. I can go outside at 2 a.m. in the morning. I can get Xiao Kao on the street. I can jump on a train in 30 minutes and be in Xi'an in 3 hours. Very convenient here. I never experienced anything like that before in my life. So when I go back, it'll be reverse culture shock. I won't be...
Next.
Do you want to move away from China? China, people have the same freedoms as any other country in the world. In the United Kingdom, I think it's traditional, and many people will stay there for that reason only. It's for heritage, because it's a heritage country, not any other reason. But I think for China, as you can see around you, it's very well developed. Chinese people should stay in China because it's a great place. It's a great place to live. If I had lots of money in the UK, then I would definitely not live in the UK. I would come and live.
Next.